Hi, I'm Ann. Thanks for joining us on Facebook Live. Today I'm going to show you whole grains like you maybe never had them before. I'm going to be frying whole grains. Yes, that is right, frying them. It's just one more way that you can enjoy the wonderful, nutritious, delicious things that are whole grains. I wrote a book about whole grains, and when you're writing a book, you need to find lots of different ways to explore these ingredients. So I love whole grains just in bowls, salads, pilafs, but I'm telling you, the fried grains, I'm not making this up, whenever I've served them to someone, whenever I've served them to people, and I've served them to a big event with 200 people, as well as at dinner parties at my house, people go nuts. They ask me about this technique and this recipe more than anything else I've ever cooked in my life. They're really that good. So let me just show you how to do it. So first you start with some cooked grains. I have two different grains here. This is bulgur and these are wheat berries. So this is red bulgur. This is what it looks like uncooked. And these are wheat berries. And this is what wheat berries look like uncooked. So first you want to cook them. And here we have on the sheet the cooked bulgur. And what you want to do is you want to spread it out on paper towels to try to get out as much moisture as possible. You'll see why in a minute. And then over here I have the cooked wheat berries. Again, you want to spread them out on paper towels. Let them dry out for a couple of hours if you can, because you want to remove as much surface moisture as possible.
And how do you cook both of these grains before we fry them?
That's a great question. So wheat berries take a fair amount of time to cook, anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. So I cook those like pasta in a lot of water, and then I just drain the water off. I do that with grains that take a longer time to cook because I feel like it's harder to predict exactly how much water you need. Your water might boil out, it might scorch, so I think it's best to use a lot of water and then just plan to drain it off. With the bulgur, you can actually just soak bulgur in warm water or pour boiling water over it, and that's a great way to cook it. You don't even actually have to boil the bulgur itself. So all grains, with a few exceptions, work really well for this technique. I would say don't use oats because they cook up very sticky, and don't use amaranth for the same reason. It cooks up very kind of porridgey, sticky. You want grains that are going to remain like separate and loose. Those are the ones that work best for frying. So before we get over to the pan, I just want to talk a little bit about frying and how that fits into a healthy diet. So don't freak out because we're cooking light and we're frying whole grains. When you cook in oil, when your oil is hot enough, the food actually absorbs very little oil. So we tested this, and for a whole batch of fried whole grains, and we're not even seeing a whole batch here, the grains absorb maybe 3 tablespoons oil total. And that's because our oil stays between 375 and 400 degrees. Use a candy thermometer or some sort of thermometer you can clip onto your pan and make sure that your oil stays hot enough. When I move over here in a second, you'll see that when I add the cooked grains to the oil, it bubbles up a lot. And that's the moisture inside the cooked grains escaping out into the hot oil. And what that's actually doing is that moisture that's coming out into the oil is kind of, in a way, this is not technical, but in a way it's pushing the oil away from and out of the food. Now, if your oil is not hot enough and your food goes in and it doesn't bubble, that's when it absorbs a ton of oil. That's what you don't want. So, safety precaution. You'll see in a second that the oil will bubble up a lot when I add the fried grains. So, work in small batches. Don't try to do more than a half a cup at a time, and don't use more than 6 cups of oil in your Dutch oven. So I'm using canola oil. If you like canola oil but you don't want GMO, look for organic canola oil. It's great for frying. You can use peanut oil. Any oil that's good for frying you can use. So I'm gonna move over here and show you. So I have some hot oil going, and I'm going to take some of the bulgur. Again, I'm working with half a cup. And I'm going to put that into my hot oil, okay? And here you're going to see why you don't want to work with more than 6 cups of oil in your pan or more than a half a cup at a time. don't really have to stir it around. I just sometimes try to break up the very large clumps. I've found that with whatever grains I'm working with, 4 to 5 minutes of frying time is perfect. So while that's going, I'm going to show you some ways to use these fried grains, and I'll show you what they look like when they're fried. So here I have some of the fried bulgur, and it's just, I don't know, it's just, there are some nice little clumps. It's very fluffy, and it is super, super crisp. And over here I have the wheat berries. Same thing, very light. These look almost like chopped pecans.
They do.
Yeah, and actually they're a great substitute for nuts if you have someone who's allergic to them, but you like the crunch of nuts. It's really crunchy, and they're so good. So let me show you some ways that you can use them. So one thing I like to do is, fish is a big favorite in my house, and so I use it sometimes as breading. So I'm just putting on a little bit of, this is a mixture of mayonnaise and Dijon mustard. This is what I'm calling the glue that's going to stick everything on. Just a teeny bit of salt and pepper. And then I have some of the fried bulgur here mixed with some chopped parsley and chopped chives. And I'm going to stick that onto my so-called glue on the fish. This is so easy to do, especially if you have a batch of fried grains in your freezer, which brings me to a great point. Fried grains, once you have them cooked, they last a long time. So you can keep them at room temperature in like a zippy bag or like a little food storage container. They'll stay at room temperature for about a week and a half, or just pop them in the freezer and they stay for a couple of months. I like to go ahead and make a big batch of fried grains and just have it on hand. I like to have something smaller, like the bulgur, because it works well for breading, like I'm showing you on this fish. And then something a little bigger or chunkier, like the wheat berries I showed you, because that's great in salads. So we're going to come back to the salmon in a minute because I have some cooking and it should be done in just a minute. Another way I love to use these grains, I'm actually not going to show you one of my favorite ways, which is to have it on ice cream. It's so good because it's crunchy, it's nutty, it's toasty. It's like the toastiest thing you've ever tasted, which is great on ice cream. But another way to enjoy it is just on your morning bowl of Greek yogurt. So I'm just taking the wheat berries here and sprinkling them onto a bowl of yogurt with some honey. And then another way is, like I said, sort of to think of them as a crunchy accent, the way that you would use nuts. So I'm going to put them on just a very simple salad of arugula and some nice seasonal tomatoes, tossed with a little vinaigrette. I've served this at dinner parties. Again, I'm not kidding. I mean, this is not like, well, it is a brag, but it's real. It's a brag because it happens, because it's real. People always ask, what was that wonderful crunchy thing? It was so toasty, and I know it wasn't nuts. So there you see the wheat berries on a salad, another great way to use them. I also like to use fried grains on casseroles, just basically anywhere where you want some crunch. Possibly you could use them on a creamy soup where you want a little bit of textural contrast. That would be awesome. So let's take this fish out. It should be done. Ha! Look at this guy. So that is the crunchiest breaded fish you'll ever have. And like I said, if you have these fried grains on hand, if you have them in your freezer, then that's going to be a cinch to pull together for a weeknight dinner. So that's it for fried grains. I've shown you some fun ways to use them. I would love for people to taste these, especially if you've never had fried grains. Do I have any tasters? Pick your poison. Are you savory or sweet?
Savory.
Okay, so we have some tasters. We'll see. And then if you want, you can also just try just the fried grains themselves. They're really cool.
They're very crunchy.
Yeah.
Good.
Crunchy and nut-like.
And do you want to eat some of your own stuff?
I I'd love to. I'm usually not a sweet person, but I'm kind of digging the yogurt honey thing.
Is this typically lighter than a
It's
pecan?
the crunchiest thing.
Like a pecan crusted salmon? Would this be lighter than
It
that?
would be a little bit lighter because there's not as much saturated, like oil saturated into the grain as there is oil saturated into the nut. So I hope you guys enjoyed learning a new way to work with whole grains. Please come back and join us next time on Facebook Live.